I'm going into a cardiovascular collapse. So my cardiovascular system is collapsing. Cardiac arrest is imminent. I'm short of breath, hyperventilating, heart rate's high. So I call an ambulance, I go to the hospital. 2024, I regained my life back by getting sober. In this video, I'm going to reveal a bit about my personal struggle with addiction and give you 3 key lessons I've learned getting sober in 2024. The adjacent doorstep is about taking the step on an adjacent path from the one we're currently walking. All it takes is one step forward in a new direction to change our lives around. I know because I did it. But it's the first step that's the most difficult, and that's what I'm here to help you with. I talk about addiction recovery and tie in psychological insights with philosophical concepts to help shift perspective on addiction. So let's get into it. I have a lot of crazy experiences over the past 20 years of my life in addiction. I lived 3/4 of my life in addiction. 2024 is the first year I've been sober in 20 years. For the past 7 of those 20 years prior to getting sober, I was severely addicted. Alcohol, amphetamines, a concomitant addiction. I couldn't separate the two. Once I paired alcohol with amphetamines, I was gone. The one instance that comes to mind and that I've been thinking about lately is an incidence of stimulant-induced psychosis. One of my favorite amphetamines was MDMA. I would take a lot of MDMA and then I would drink with it and I would stay up for days and I would take so much that I would end up in psychosis sometimes. But one of the most prominent instances of psychosis I remember is when I was up for maybe 2-3 days and I took a lot of MDMA. My reality was shaking. I couldn't see straight. I would look at the walls, the wave pattern permeating the wall. I started getting paranoid because every time I looked at something, movement, everything was shaking. I was hallucinating pretty strongly. And the thing with MDMA is MDMA metabolizes into MDA, and MDA is a potent psychedelic amphetamine. And I had taken a lot of MDMA. So I had a lot of MDA coursing through my bloodstream. I was feeling it, but not in a good way because I started turning my perspective in on myself and getting paranoid. I'd be looking at my wrist and trying to feel my pulse, and my pulse was weak. I couldn't find it, whatever. So I was looking at my veins and I couldn't see them because everything I looked at was moving. I didn't have a stable frame of reference for what was real and what wasn't. My mind starts thinking in a psychosis state that my veins are disappearing, or my veins are disappearing, or my veins are going away. My mind assumes I'm going into a cardiovascular collapse. So my cardiovascular system is collapsing. Cardiac arrest is imminent. I'm short of breath, hyperventilating, heart rate's high. So I call an ambulance, I go to the hospital. When I get to the hospital, things change drastically for the worse. It was a terror. I was in a night terror, except I was awake, experiencing it. The hospital I was at, it was in the middle of the night. There was only a skeleton crew. I think there was one doctor around. He couldn't get to me right away. So they put me into this ward where there was other people. They assigned a security guard to me because I was in a psychosis state. But I wasn't a danger to anybody. I wasn't dangerous. It was just that I was paranoid. I had a health paranoia going on. I thought I was dying. I couldn't see my veins. I thought I was going into cardiovascular collapse. So I was panicking, trying to get help, trying to get water. The security guard would escort me to the bathroom and all these things. And I remember, anyways, so it was a terrible experience. And I remember waking up the next day feeling like I got hit by a truck. The crazy thing about that experience is, do you think that made me stop? No, it didn't make me stop. A few weeks after that, I was back at it, doing the same shit all over again, getting drunk, getting high, and running myself into the ground. But I'm telling you that story because that's how bad I was. And that's only one instance of a stimulant-induced psychosis. That's only one story of me going to the hospital in that kind of state. And this is how bad I was, is that I would have these negative events. I knew that I was taking a toll on my health and I was destroying my mental health. I was destroying my body. I was destroying my relationships. Everything in my life was falling apart. I was facing homelessness at one point, but none of that prevented me from continuing my self-destructive behavior. I was in a negative feedback loop. I was just hurting myself. I was just seeking pleasures of the flesh, to the detriment of my spirit and my heart and my emotion and my quality of life. Eventually I got sober. How I got sober was I prayed to God for help because I reached a point where I couldn't help myself. I had to lower my pride, I had to lower my ego, I had to diminish myself, and I had to accept that I needed help. And the only way I could get help is to ask others for help. So that's what I did. I ended up asking a family member for help. I got checked into rehab, I followed a 12-step program. Now I'm going into 2025 with 12 months of sobriety. I want to tell you 3 key lessons that I've learned over the past year of getting sober in 2024, so maybe you can get sober in 2025. The 3 key lessons I learned: balancing my physical nature with the higher nature. But simply what I mean is sublimating my base desires, my physical desires, by replacing my desires for the physical with a higher purpose or with a higher nature. And for me, that is seeking the things of the spirit, seeking the things of the intellect, and bringing my vision to reality. So instead of fulfilling my base pleasures, I'm now working towards a higher purpose, which involves pursuing education, studying, reading, writing, working on projects, bringing my vision to reality. I have a vision in my mind and I'm trying to bring it to reality. I see the steps in between where I am now, where I want to be, and I'm working towards getting there, towards closing the gap, working towards a higher purpose that I can feel a sense of accomplishment and achievement from. The second key lesson is incorporating exercise. So I incorporate exercise on a daily basis, and without exercise, I wouldn't be able to maintain equilibrium. Exercise allows me to regulate my mental well-being, my emotional health. Exercise induces the release of neurotransmitters. Every day that I exercise, I can get a boost of feel-good hormones. The third key lesson is including fellowship and family in my life. Over these past 12 months, I've made a habit to visit my aunt and my uncle on a weekly basis, and they provide me support. I have support behind me from my family who encourage me to keep going along this path of recovery. So they've encouraged me to go back to school. They're encouraging me to work on my projects. They're encouraging me to learn about the Lord. They're encouraging me to go to church, and we reminisce about family. Without that, I wouldn't have an anchor. Keeping my family in my life is an anchor in recovery for me. I have fellowship with not just the Lord, but I partake in fellowship with fellow Christians. I go to church every Sunday. And then there is a fellowship night, another night of the week that I partake in. That keeps me centered and grounded. That allows me to be part of something other than myself. It allows me to feel that I belong to something outside of myself. Church is a community of like-minded individuals, of higher-minded individuals, of educated individuals, of successful individuals. It's a place where I can find mentors who can help guide me along life, mentors who are more experienced and can give me the right inspiration, tell me things that I wouldn't know otherwise. So they say that we're the amalgamation, or we're the summation of the 5 most prominent people in our lives. When I was in addiction, I was hanging out with the lowest of the low. I was hanging out with addicts. I was hanging out with homeless people. I was hanging out with drunks. I wasn't hanging out with the best. It reflected poorly on me, and I started taking on their qualities, and I wasn't able to improve because I was hanging out with people that were either on my level of drunkenness or on the rung lower than me. And that's detrimental to spiritual, emotional, mental, physical well-being. Now I have only good people in my life. Everyone is sober. Everyone is Christian, or we support each other. It gives me something to feel part of. So I'm just going to recap the 3 key lessons that I learned in 2024, getting sober so that maybe you can get sober in 2025, pursuing a higher purpose, or replacing the lower nature with a higher nature. Exercise gives me dopamine every day and helps me feel better and regulates my mood and gives me mental clarity and sharpens my mind. Family and fellowship. Being part of a support network, being part of a community, and belonging to something outside of myself gives me belonging that I was longing for. Addiction, it really is isolating. When I was in my severe addiction, at my worst, I was isolated. I cut off my friends and my family to the point where my friends contacted my family through online methods to get them to perform a wellness check on me because I had just dropped off the face of the earth. I hope this video finds you well, and if you like what you hear, check out this video for more.